Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Rong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Suzy Rong, hello.
Hi, Warren. I know you've always wanted a career in the magical world of radio transmission. But my question to you is this. Did you ever, even for a moment, think that maybe I would like to be a teacher at some stage?
Yes. Do you know what? I did. You're right. I did, Suzy. I really wanted to be one. I know. When I was in high school, I thought I really want to be a teacher. I don't know. It just, for some reason, I think maybe it was my parents' expectations or something. I don't know. But I didn't pursue it. I pursued other professions instead. But yes, I did. I wanted to be one. Did you?
Well, you think your parents would have not liked it, would not have liked it if you became a teacher?
Maybe not. I think I also wanted to experience a bit of a different world as well. I think, to see what the outside the school environment was like. And, I pursued, obviously, I did other technical professions. But I am fascinated by it. It's something that I've thought of throughout my career. You know, when you're stuck in a job and you think, I feel like I could make a difference somehow. Maybe, we could impart this wisdom onto kids and help them. And I always thought of it more as a wind-down career for me. Perhaps I could, I don't know if you can do it, but, get all the wisdom out there in the I don't like using the real world because schools are still part of the real world, but, in other industries, and then bring that to help other kids expand their knowledge. That was my view, but then also that competed with radio because I love radio. And you're right, when I did engineering, the goal was to work on transmitters. That's what I was. So anyway, not necessarily presenting, but I would love to have been a teacher, and I think it's such a important profession. What about you, Suzy? Did you ever want to be one?
Yeah, I think I thought quite seriously about it when I was about to finish university. But, in the 90s, kind of early 2000s, it was a very unfriendly to queer sort of place. I think obviously, at that stage, I didn't know I was going to live in Australia for sure, and going back to Singapore and just became too much of a terrifying idea of having to go back into the closet and all that. And even at that stage, if I were to stay in Australia, I knew that, you couldn't be your full self, and you certainly couldn't be as colorful or as flamboyant a person as at that stage at university time I had already pretty much come out to everyone. Before I came out as trans, I came out as gay. And the idea that you had to go into a professional life that couldn't quite tolerate that, it was just too scary and too hard, I think. I think that was the main thing that stopped me from going in there. And
of course, it's not easy for everyone in certain schools at the moment either. You can't necessarily be yourself. So, and I think it's a great, hats off to all the teachers out there, because I've got to admit, Suzy, sometimes I question, I don't know if I could do it, because some of the stories I hear about behaviour, I think, I don't know, I don't think I'd tolerate it, and I don't know if I'd be very good or in that environment.
I feel like you and I would have been great teachers. We're so preachy and we are so serious at the same time when we want to be.
I wouldn't tolerate bad behaviour, though. That's my problem, and I think you've got to. The thing with me, Suzy, is I get really annoyed when disruptors disrupt the learning of other students. It used to annoy me at school when there'd be, people acting up or whatever, for whatever reason. We don't know what was going on in their lives, but it used to frustrate me because I think this is time that we're wasting now. And I just wonder, if I was a teacher, how would I handle that? Would I get annoyed?
Look, I don't like time wasters, obviously, but I actually have a soft spot for mischievous children. So in that way, I think I probably would have been a friendlier teacher than maybe you would have been. But who knows?
You would have been. You know what? Maybe we could have co-taught a class. We would have been good together, because you would have balanced me out and vice versa. Maybe that would have
Are
been
we going to be good cop, bad cop?
I think so. I think that would have worked really well. Suzy, we watched on Netflix Teach You a Lesson. I'm dying to hear what you thought about it. Give us your review.
The action happens in South Korea, where corporal punishment was banned from schools in 2010. In the new Netflix series, Teach You a Lesson, students all over the country have gone out of control, with schools experiencing serious behavioral problems from their once obedient teens. In comes the Educational Rights Protection Bureau, a newly formed government body that sends inspectors out to address issues that teaching staff are unable to handle. Contrary to rules around not dishing out physical punishment, these inspectors do not hesitate to use force, often very violently, in this highly dramatized and action-packed K-drama. From what I understand, there has indeed been a rise in disciplinary issues in the schools of South Korea, which is obviously the inspiration for Teach You a Lesson. It appears that some people feel that the problem has grown so out of hand that a TV series like this could be justified. I find this sort of violent fantasy in any storytelling to be repugnant anyway, and when it is targeted at the youth, it's just outrageous to me. I'm watching this and thinking how easy it is for people to fall back on fascistic ideas when problems arise. To be fair, I have no idea what's happening in schools over there, but I can tell you that corporal punishment is not part of education in many other places, and we are doing just fine. There are many things we want to teach our young, but the violent use of force should never be one of them. I do believe that discipline is a highly valuable quality to impart, but there is plenty of evidence that discipline is something you can teach without hitting anybody. Yes, I know Teach You a Lesson is a highly exaggerated work of drama, but it upsets me that even the mere thought of beating up teenagers could solve any problem. Coming from a strict Asian background myself, I did experience some mild spanking at home and at school, so I know how that mindset works. To me, it's just laziness and reflects an inability to actually communicate and teach effectively. It is also a house of cards situation. Traditional systems require capital punishment because it doesn't have other mechanisms that maintain order sufficiently. So if the main disciplinary tool has been removed and not been replaced by something else, it should come as no surprise that problems arise. I could go on, but let's hear from Warren instead. Warren, did you see something that I couldn't get from Teach You a Lesson?
Suzy, you know what? I had the, I agree with you on physical violence, no question whatsoever. But, there was a part of me that watched this and thought, finally, someone is doing something about the bullies. It taps into something very primal, wanting someone powerful to protect the vulnerable, especially when adults, schools or systems have failed. And I was thinking about it. It's not hard to understand why that's satisfying. I wish sometimes someone would have stepped in to stop the bullies when I was at school, but a lot of the teachers didn't. And maybe that's one of the reasons I did. They didn't. They laughed with the bullies. They sided with the bullies. And, bullying isn't just kids being cruel. It can change the way someone sees themselves for years. And I've got to admit, I loved it. I loved watching this. I loved seeing someone come in and correct the behaviour that was going on that can impact someone, into their adult life. I thought that was really, really good. Suzy, the other thing is, it's like I mentioned, it's how many adults look away. One of the strongest themes in this show, Teach You a Lesson, is the failure of adults, teachers, parents, schools, systems. People either don't see it or they don't act or protect themselves. And that failure creates that space for extreme solutions. So
I never went to school in Australia, so I never understood what bullying is like. Because even when I came here in the 90s, I did hear that bullying was a serious problem and they didn't know how to kind of tackle the issue. Where I came from in Singapore, teachers were venerated in a very serious way. Like, people were really serious about the profession. People really respected teachers. And students were, by and large, just kind of really terrified of teachers. So if word was out that anyone was being bullied, in a few short weeks, before it gets too serious, something would have happened. I don't remember very clearly how things worked. Nobody got beaten. Like, there was always the threat of corporal punishment, but it was always a threat. Like, you hear that, some school somewhere actually got the cane out and cane someone on the bum. But it never happened in any of the years that I was in. The only time was when the teacher would get a ruler out and kind of hit our hands with it when something really serious happened. But in terms of bullying, I remember teachers were able to handle it. I wouldn't say easily, but I felt like they had either they took the responsibility seriously, or they had some kind of mechanism. And also, I think if anyone back then, when I was going to school, if anyone had a one-to-one talking to by a teacher, it was taken as a very serious thing. And maybe that's not the case here. I'm not sure.
I think, look, I had a totally different experience here. I remember it was year 8 or year 9. I was in high school, and I remember the class. It was a maths class, and the kids were picking on me, and I was on the side of the classroom, and the teacher was giggling, and it's crystal clear in my mind looking up at the teacher giggling and thinking, oh my goodness, what do I do? Do I get out of this class? I felt so threatened. It really stuck with me. It just totally different. I don't know if that
I did have that experience as well. Like, I think there was name calling, and I remember the teacher kind of hearing and finding it funny, which obviously was very hurtful. But there was one time when I had quite a serious kind of bullying issue that went on for maybe a week or so, and it took me a long time to tell my parents. I can't remember why. Like, it was humiliating or something. I couldn't tell my parents. Oh, I know what it was. It was because they were blackmailing me for me saying a bad word. I was like, second year, and they were blackmailing me and then using that to bully me. And so it took me a long time to tell my parents because I didn't want them to know I had used a bad word, but it had gone so difficult that I told my parents. And then I think my father went to the school and then spoke with someone, and it just kind of stopped quite easily. But I think that's all because, at that time anyway, I don't know what it's like now, teachers and the principal and all that, they took disciplinary action very seriously, which is obviously something very different from here. I
think that, certainly the school I was in, that was lacking. There was a lack of disciplinary action, and bullies could basically get away with what they liked, and we were all too afraid to report it. Because, we saw that the teachers weren't doing anything about it. If we report it, it'll probably backfire on us. And also, I remember in grade 4 in primary school, I think I've spoken to you about it before, that teacher, that disgusted look on her face telling me that, that I was too close a friend with my best friend at the time. His name was Matthew. And, I wasn't even sexually mature then. I had no idea what I was attracted to. But, she was having problems with the fact that I was really close to this boy. I mean, we were grade 4, for goodness sakes, and she was disgusted.
Sounds like she's a massive pervert.
She was terrible. And, so there were all this sort of stuff going on. And in hindsight, I think I went through a stage, Suzy, where I lost a lot of respect for teachers. I remember later on in high school, I was like, I give up, And I remember one of them telling me to pick up papers in the yard, and I got into trouble because I said, no, I'm not picking it up. Because those dirty boys over there were the ones that dropped it. They need to be accountable for it. And I got into trouble. I got the ruler slap over the hands for speaking back to the teacher. But I did go through that period of rebellion of, I've had enough. If you can't protect me, I'm going to look after myself, which was kind of quite powerful in a way. But it's just sad that, they've got this custodian role. If they don't look after kids that can't protect themselves, I feel like it's wrong. Probably different now. I mean, that was a long time ago. But, I found watching Teach You a Lesson, I felt that revenge was quite satisfying in some ways, I mean.
Yeah, I did at moments think that if there was a film or something that had, trans people kind of attacking transphobic people, I probably would enjoy it. And I was trying to think if it has ever happened. I think remember when we covered Pose a few years ago, I think there were little moments where there were tiny revenge moments. Yeah, I guess those might be satisfying. But, seeing violence on screen has just never appealed to me. Yeah. I think it's like I think for me it's a karma thing. I don't believe that it works. I just don't believe that it works. I feel like if you kind of inflict harm on someone, on one hand it will come back to you, and then the person that cops it is it's not gonna learn a good lesson. Like, I feel like they might learn to be fearful, but it kind of manifests itself in ugly ways that you don't intend. So those sort of stories are not for me.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you, and I suppose it is drama. The one, there is one, of course, where, and I found this quite sad to watch, where the teacher's bullied by the mother of one of the students, and I don't know if you saw that episode, Suzy, and that's based on a true story in Korea, apparently, and that's really sad because, you know, I don't want to spoil it, but it ruins her life.
Well, I think it reflects a wider social issue. It is sort of a cultural thing, isn't it? That there are these social dynamics that happen, you know, in a lot of Asian communities. Kind of social hierarchies are really unhealthy, and you can see it in some of the stories here.
Text came in saying, I think it's worse now. The manosphere has infiltrated the schools and the boys are abusive to anything feminine. I mean, I don't know what it's like in the schools, but if that's the case, I mean, you know, anyone who's different would be vulnerable. And why should they have to go through this? And if it means some body is formed, maybe they don't have to use violence to stop it, but they come in and protect the teachers as well who can't do anything because they're feeling threatened as well. Maybe that's what's needed, some sort of interference.
Yeah, I do know about this manosphere issue, and I know that the sort of world they target young boys, young men, and I do believe that there is kind of this change in culture with young men. But at the same time, as a trans person, it has never felt safer than now. Like to walk out into a bus full of school kids and not feel terrified. It used to be so terrifying, but now, like, you know, I'm walking up into a bus in Sydney, and that, you know, it might be school might have just been, they've just finished school and they're on their way home wherever, and you might get into a busload of kids. You no longer get that scary feeling, and certainly nothing terrible has happened in the last, 5, 6, 7 years. I do feel like young men have changed, better in some ways, but I definitely see that, the evidence of, this kind of bad influence is certainly real.
Suzy Rong, and, on that note, what are we watching next week?
Next week, let's switch over to Apple TV to check out the wonderfully titled Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed, a comedy thriller crime series in which something goes horribly wrong in the first episode when Paula is FaceTiming her favorite by-the-hour cam boy. See you next Tuesday for some Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. Bye-bye.